Hello, my name is Matthew Heredia. I am in section A06, and this is my self-introduction. My personality and positionality have relevance in the context of this final video recording. I'm from Southeast LA, and I'm male Latino, more specifically from Mexican descent. Both my parents are born in Mexico, um, and I come from the perspective of a working class family, and from a community where I have a lot in common with because everyone around there is also from Hispanic or Latin descent and from a working class community. But living in Los Angeles, I do also see the dynamics. A few miles away are some of the biggest houses I've ever seen, some of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world as well. So I recognize as well uh, the privilege I have living in Los Angeles. And then again, I recognize the privilege I have of being a man, but also the social disadvantage I have with being a Latino first gen. And because of that, I have been able to connect and I've been able to recognize many of the topics we've discussed in this class and connect them to my own experiences and issues that I have learned about prior to a capacity. So the 2 weeks that I want to focus on for my retrospective analysis are week 7 and week 9. I chose these 2 weeks because they both go hand in hand in terms of the way that the U.S. Enforces laws and policies that are pivoted against groups of people by exploitation and remove a sense of humanity and belonging to the United States. So in week 7, we discussed labor and race-based nationalism, which I found interesting is how much the U.S., like today in terms of citizenship status and rights for working class migrants, created so many barriers and roadblocks. And there has been progress made since then, but efforts of preserving exploitative labor and making obtaining citizenship status harder are still present and are persistent objectives by the U.S. government today. They're just a little more creative today, and not just as, I guess you can say, bland and out there as they were before. Some specific policies discussed in week 7 are that connect to me are the Chinese Exclusion Act and the U.S. v. Wong Kim course case. This case affirmed the 14th Amendment in terms of birthright citizenship in the U.S. regardless of parents' legal status. Policies like this intersect meaning between each other and are important to me because of why my status here is a legal citizen, and shows how we can resist against hegemonic policies and exclusions. And it shouldn't be difficult in the first place to navigate this sea, but the same way that they persist in these legal policies, we have to persist as well and get creative like them as well. Likewise, in week 9, we see these same concepts of persistent pursuit of institutional policies working against groups of minorities and migrants as well. Policies such as the exception clause of the 13th Amendment and the social political pursuits of maintaining dominance through de facto status crimes, as we discussed both days in lecture about Catro's article. As described in the article about the de facto crimes, the simple act of just existing as a migrant or someone with Latino heritage or someone that exerts such Latino heritage, the criminal status is just inherent, and because of society and because of political agendas that are just being pushed. So that already just immediately puts a sort of dominating status on white supremacist ideals. How we just as a community are inherently criminals and inherently illegal because of this and because of these political agendas. And again, criminal statuses, right? They keep echoing in terms of slavery with the exception clause of the 13th Amendment, pushing and pursuing the use of free labor, but this time in terms of incarceration, kind of validating this modern day slavery. And again, the validation of white supremacy still being alive through the belittlement of social belonging and instead inherent criminal statuses. And it's clear that the majority of the people being targeted with these institutional policies are people of color. Now, my personal impact, my reflection part, I connect pretty good with these two topics over the course, being labor and industrial capitalism, and the incarceration and ratelessness, as I described earlier. This connects to me because of the kind of corporate mindset I've been exposed to, and as well with my family's insight. How manipulative and specific capitalism has affected our positionality. Something that my dad constantly describes is how the world is all just a business for the elites who control it, such as incarcerated labor, and again, for my own topics of conversation, of the criminalization of migrants, leading to a militarized border, right? That are just that is just being invested billions and millions into by the government to private techs and private corporations who, whether their techniques whether their techniques work or they don't, the private corporations will always win because they get their money, they get paid. It doesn't matter to them whether the border security is actually working or not. And they will keep lobbying, they will keep spending money to push whoever political agenda will mean getting the U.S. government to invest in the militarization of the border. These are just concepts and ideas that I talk about all by myself with my family and friends, and it's just feeding into the dehumanizing political agendas and just the dehumanizing of our humanity that exists in politics. How it looks like how nowadays we just do things in politics to humanize, to fight, to protect, but not really such an inviting landscape it is anymore. But yeah. And again, this isn't just a critique. Again, and specifically, we do talk about capitalism, but this isn't just a critique towards capitalism. Capitalism just does a better job in hiding, at least throughout history, these exploitative practices, unlike communism. But this is just a critique on all economies throughout the world and how dehumanizing everything has been throughout history. How us as humans want dominance, want to be at the top, want to have the most money, the biggest pyramid, the biggest skyscraper, the biggest empire, and how it just leads to suffering for individuals who are just exploited for these practices.